What's going on, YouTube? It's the Bushy Beard, and I'm back, and I'm bushier than ever. Right now, we got older soldiers meets younger soldier. So it's a video by LADbible TV, and it's someone that I saw, and I thought, man, this would be interesting to see. The young and old veterans coming together and talking about things. The younger guys usually have more admiration and respect for the older ones for what they've been through, because I don't know what war this guy was through, but the World War II was unlike a lot of things that we've ever seen. World War II veteran, it says, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. And then they have respect and admiration for us and what we went through as newer vets, and the war that we fought, and things like that. And I think these guys are British anyways, so it's a different perspective than the American one, or from an American soldiers. But nonetheless,
I think the World War II one will be similar because it was worldwide. Yeah.
Well, right. But I mean, just in general, like the World War II experience for Britain would be a little bit different, because
it was
they were
bombing there.
Yeah, they almost lost their their country. Mm-hmm. It was like that they were doing everything to defend it. So this I think will be interesting. So here we go. It's a little bit longer.
And they both lost
lots of people.
Their friends. And
yeah. Ready?
To Iraq in 2006. We then deployed to Kosovo. From there, we then deployed to Afghanistan.
Well, you've been through quite a lot, son, haven't you?
Hi.
Hello, young man.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Pleasure. How you been? You okay?
Not so bad. Yourself?
On the spot.
On this.
I want to make sure that it's loud enough for them to hear too. Okay. Sorry guys if it's not quite loud enough, but
it's loud enough now for us.
Spot.
There's a stack of them here, isn't there?
All right.
Which war did you fight in?
Second World War. My flotilla was the third flotilla, and there was 12 of us, and we took part in the North African campaign, and then we went on to the invasion of Sicily.
How long were you away for?
2 years.
So that was towards the end of the war. Or no, I don't know exactly when, but Northern Africa, they marched up to Italy from there. So
Years. In them days, with a different war, you had to go where you were sent, and some lads went to North Africa and went right through and never got home till way after D-Day. The other wars that followed this, it's an entirely different war than what ours was.
And I agree.
2 years they were gone.
Yeah, it could, and that's the thing with with the World War II, is if you were on the front lines or anything like that, there was no time limit. Like, we're lucky nowadays that they have a mandatory rotations for the Marines at 6 months, for Army it's a year. But could you imagine sometimes they were there for 3 years?
Shell shock, man. Just the whole isolation thing from people who loved you and cared about you.
Yeah, and it's not like now when we have emails and things like that.
Video chats.
It's letters that you're waiting for sometimes.
My mother had to go through that with the Vietnam thing.
I think it goes through generations, doesn't it? It goes from one war to another.
It's frightening to see what happens to these modern wars. You're fighting an enemy you do not know where he is for the start. Like in our war, as long as you were going forward, you were going the right way.
And see, that would be the biggest difference between modern warfare and their warfare, was that they knew who the enemy was. Mm-hmm. The enemy was a clothed enemy. They were uniformed, and they were right in front of you. Mm-hmm. That's the hard part about now, is that they don't. The terrorists don't usually have uniforms, and so.
Yeah.
But you get in Afghanistan, and that he can come up behind you, and you don't know he's there. And from my way of thinking,
and they use kids. They use anything they can use to try to get to you.
I wouldn't like to have fought in that war, I'll be honest with you.
See, that's where I think the two change, because I wouldn't like to fight in your war, because in my eyes, being on a ship.
It's probably safer on a ship. So I can't swim, so...
You can't swim? I thought you were a sailor.
And they never taught me. Where would you swim to?
Where would I swim to?
If you're a long way from home, it don't matter whether you could swim or not.
After training, I got to battalion, and then we deployed to Belize. Yeah. We went for 6 weeks in the jungle, training. Yeah.
Okay, Belize. I was like, Belize is in South America.
I went on a cruise to Belize.
Oh, did you? Nice. Yeah, no, we trained in Okinawa, Japan, for jungle warfare, and it was terrible.
Terrible.
You would literally, all day, this was your day.
Up and down hills.
Mountains.
Mountains.
Not hills. And it's, you go maybe a mile in a day. Because straight, you walk more than a mile, but like on a map, you've only got a mile. So.
And that was pre-training for Iraq.
As the crow
we deployed
flies.
in Iraq in 2006. Yeah, 2006. That was a 6-month tour, turned into a 7-month tour. And we were deployed to Saddam's palace in Basra South, where we patrolled and did strike ops. After there, we come back. I went on to do my promotion. We then deployed to Kosovo. That was for peacekeeping. And then from there, we then deployed to Afghanistan, to Herrick 10. So completely different operations altogether, from armoured to foot.
Well, you've been through quite a lot, son, haven't you? What are your feelings towards the enemy now in comparison to at the time? That's a good one, that.
At the time,
especially for the World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, there, you know, people living together, and we're all internationally enmeshed, really.
Yeah.
And
well, we are in America more, I think, a mixture than most of the countries.
I think in England they're pretty. They have a not as much.
There are a lot of
They're
tourists.
not the melting pot that
Right.
we are, but they still. There's a lot of different people in.
it's weird.
But yeah, to get along in the world these days, you kind of have to be.
Yeah.
It's because I'm going to probably stand out here, is I didn't have any hate for them. I believed that we were fighting in someone else's country and they were defending it in a way. But I think that's one of the other reasons why I left, because I didn't believe in it in the end. I think I fought that hard, and I was fighting an enemy so much that I was equal to them. If someone can get a number of men in front of me and fight me and my men to the extreme that they were fighting us, then hat off to them. What about yourself?
Well, we fought the Germans to win the war. That's what was bred into you. And it took me until about 1970 before I could really, see me way clear. I have nothing against them now. It took me all that time to realize they were the same as us, doing what they had to do.
Have you ever fought?
Well, I think to a difference also is, you were fighting the Nazis.
Yes, and
you weren't fighting the Germans.
Right, and it clearly, even until to this day, there's no doubt that war needed to be fought.
Yeah.
In my opinion, whereas all the other things, it's for some. It was to get Hitler out of power. Mm-hmm. In other words, that was the goal. And a lot of the conflicts we get into now, it's like, now what is this about?
2001, we knew exactly what it was about.
Saddam Hussein.
What it was about, the attacks on the terrorists.
Terrorists.
The terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers. The problem is we've been there so long.
Yes.
There was never really, and that's the problem with modern warfare, is when you're fighting an enemy that is not
clothed in a uniform.
Not clothed in a uniform.
Carrying a gun.
Not structurally the same.
Yeah.
And can vary from thing to thing. The next leader that comes into power will be the new leader. Yeah. And it's just a new regime, maybe a new name. But
maybe worse than the other one.
I wouldn't say worse. Probably the same. But it's a never-ending cycle, and there were times when I read that in Iraq at least, people were lining up to vote for their new leader, even though they're told they would be killed by I think at the time it was Al Qaeda or the Taliban, and they still showed up and voted. Like, to me, those are the types of people that need to be protected and deserve to have some sort of what we call freedom, or some semblance of
they're heroes.
I think they're heroes in a sense, yeah. But I think they're just worth fighting for. I don't know if we should be there now. I haven't really kept up with the whole thing in the Middle East since I gotten out, but they love us over there. Yeah, no matter what the media portrays, and the people that we run into they're happy that we're there, and they're happy that we're trying to help. Sometimes it doesn't seem like we're helping as much as we could be, but I think at the end of the day it's time to exit.
Fire the weapon.
Yes, on the landing craft I was an anti-aircraft gunner. We had 6 Oerlikons and a 12-pounder on her. So I fired that many times through the war. It's a different thing. It's not like firing a rifle. No, like a soldier has to rely on a rifle, doesn't he? Like I had to rely on me anti-aircraft gun. Whenever you're in imminent danger, you call to action station. And if the planes come at you, then you have to fight back. And on the Oerlikon, you had a shield, which you look through the gap, so to speak. It always gave you that feeling that he couldn't hit you, which was a silly way of thinking, but it gave you a bit of feeling of comfort, if you know what I mean.
See, with us, we were just rifles. Rifles, and we had GPMGs, which were 7.62 belt fed, which that most of them...
Well, you'd be lost without your rifle or your gun, wouldn't you, on the deck?
Afghan had a section, so I had a section of 8 lads, and very, very good lads as well. We would get in 360 ambushes, so we'd get hit by an IED, so you'd have someone from the front, right, left, they're coming from the top of the compounds, and they basically just spraying you with rapid fire with 7.62. Once you got into the firefight, you could never tell what was going to happen, but you always knew it was going to be like a well-oiled machine, the way your SOPs kick into place, the way your lads they just knew, because of the amount of training you did, you knew exactly what we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And the reason Marines were looked at as so, at least in World War II, so weird was most of the time when you get ambushed, you turn and you kind of like, you seek cover, and then you start returning. Where Marines, if you get ambushed, they turn right to you and they start walking towards you. And the enemy never really saw something like that, and so that's why they earned the name Teufelhound. Devil
What is
dog.
it?
Teufelhound, devil dog.
Devil dogs, yeah.
Yeah, and in World War II is because the Germans were like they're crazy, and they're like ravaged dogs, devil dogs coming after us, and so that's where they got that name from. But yeah.
How do you think soldiers are viewed in society?
It all depends how the media portrays us.
Mm-hmm.
Remember going back when we come back from Iraq?
It's no truer statement right there.
Mm-hmm.
I think luckily, my generation, at least here in America, has been relatively well welcomed.
Well, that's because of the
Where
mistakes we made.
Vietnam or
we made
Korea.
Well, I don't know about Korea, but I just know that in Vietnam, we just made such I
They were
didn't.
treated terribly.
Not me. I didn't.
Right.
But soldiers were
Really bad.
treated terrible.
And they were even treated terribly by their military members. That's why there's the VFW and the American Legion, is because when the Vietnam soldiers came back, they were told they can't join the VFW because they were part of the losers, and we had never lost a war prior to that. And I don't even think we necessarily lost Vietnam. We withdrew.
Yeah.
But they were treated badly.
Yeah.
So now they're allowed. They're allowed in to the VFW. But at the time, it was not
It
very
was-
nice.
And it's never the soldier's fault. It
No.
should not be ever looked at. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And if you want to spit at somebody, spit at a politician.
Yeah.
We landed in Teesside, and we had groups of people that weren't happy that we were there, and they were British people, because the media portrayed us as killers, as murderers. Flipping the coin, when we come back from Afghan, we were portrayed as heroes. So the whole country rejoiced to go, oh, save our heroes. Obviously, your generation, you were
Well,
classed as
I
heroes.
think the war had lasted so long with ours that they were glad to see the people back home. And I think most soldiers and sailors, any serviceman, was looked upon, they say thank you to them for getting their freedom in one way.
Yeah.
They were glad to see the war over. I can understand the difference now. It's a different generation, and yeah,
It's
but
a different war, isn't it?
well, you find it, I know.
When you're in a war zone, and as you know, you've got that constant stress above your head of what's next, and you're constantly on high alert, and you're constantly irate. It only takes one person to look at you, and you're ready to fight straight away. Hence why when soldiers come back home, someone looks at you the wrong way, you're already in fight mode. It's been 12 years, I'm still in fight mode now. I don't think I'll ever change that.
If you're fighting a war, it's them or us, so to speak. And that's my way of thinking. And so let it be.
That's it. But when I was out there, it was my lads. My lads are coming home, no matter what. I don't care who you are, my lads are coming home.
Have you ever lost a member of your company?
It's I want to answer it, but I don't at the same time, because we've lost quite a lot of lads from our battalion, of our regiment. I'll say regiment because it's 1 RGJ and 2 RGJ. Today is the 10th anniversary for a lad we lost called Paul McAleese. He was my screw. We lost him 10 years today. We've lost quite a lot. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Like, don't want to go too much into it. Like,
How about you? Did you lose friends?
No, not in Afghanistan. You know, in training ops, you'd lose people by, you know, things happen sometimes. It's while we were in Afghanistan, I don't think we had anybody die. So we had, I think, one person died, but it wasn't from like enemy fire or anything like that. So.
Okay.
But yeah, it was pretty bad.
have you ever suffered a serious injury?
I've only had a backflash from the gun, which sometimes with an Orlican, after it gets hot, thing sort of blows and you get a flash, but nothing serious.
Apart from like a few broken like sprains and broken wrists and stuff like that, and major one would be probably mentally. And this is, as you know, it's a massive epidemic that's going through the military at the moment for veterans and for still serving, is mental health. The past 13 years I've really suffered, like really suffered.
You know, that's the biggest thing between these two is his generation, it was looked on as weakness. Like there was World War I, there was shell shock. No, shell shock was World War I. World War II was battle fatigue, but it was looked at as a character trait. And they would actually, even though it was impossible to do, what they would do is they would try to screen people for what they thought would be the people that would be affected by this kind of stuff going in, even though it's impossible to do because you don't know exactly how somebody's going to react under the crunch time. You don't know, are they going to be cool, calm, collected? Are they going to freeze up? Are they going to, what's going to happen until it happens, you know? And mental health was looked at as a weakness a lot of times in past wars. I think it still has a stigma among military members, and there's definitely a stigma of mental health and service members with civilians. you can't. I couldn't tell you probably how many times I've heard somebody say, "Well, I don't want a service member snapping and PTSD and killing me or something."
Well, that's
like that.
because of the media.
Well, no.
And how they highlight that particular part of it.
Yeah. Well, and it's bad, but it's just it's a good ignorance on their part to an extent, and it's but I think it's becoming less of a stigma and more of a this is something that needs to be looked into and needs to be dealt with, and there's a lot of things going on with the 22 a day movement, which is 22. There's some iffiness around the statistic, but it came out to like 22 soldiers a day commit suicide, which there's iffinesses around how they came up with that number, but so there's a whole lot of things going around with that. They're trying to increase mental health awareness and things like that. So, but it's not 22 a day anymore. Don't worry about it. It's a lot less now.
But I've sort of like...
From when they started keeping track of that in World War II to now, it averaged out to be about 22 days. But I think it's more from World War II Vietnam era than it is from this era.
Battered it backwards and kept moving forward, you know what I mean? Always kept moving forward. And I think with my age now, I've got to the age where it's like, well, I've got my family and all that. It's like, I've got to stay straight, you know what I mean? But it creeps back a lot. It does creep back a lot. I think having my daughter is kicking up the arse quite hard, like, you know what I mean? But I think if it didn't, I'd probably still be like that, you know what I mean? It's but I know a lot of lads, a lot of girls, a lot of soldiers are suffering. Do you miss the forces?
Oof, that's a good question. No, I don't think I missed it. I was away about 4.5 years. I served, and I was glad to get out. And no, that's my answer to that. I don't know about yourself.
No. A lot of the lads, their issue with it, when they say, oh yeah, I missed the army, I wish I'd go back. I think what it is regimented. They're regimented in such a routine where that is your life, and you do that for 3 to 7 to 22 years. Well, I left, and it was like, oh, I'm struggling here. But it was because it was the unknown. It's I don't miss it. I don't
see. I think proper planning can minimize that feeling a lot. For me, when I left, I knew what I wanted to do. It's not what I eventually ended up doing, but I knew what I wanted to do. I knew how to get it done, and I knew what I needed to do to get it done. And so you don't really have time to think and reflect. A lot of people leave because their time's up and they don't really know what they're going to do next, but they're going to get out and they're going to figure it out. But that's the point where you're just sitting there and you're like, man, I really miss... Because sometimes you're at home alone and you're not really doing anything, but you're never really alone in the military. And so that's the one thing that people miss is always having somebody they could talk to, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, and things like that. And so it's kind of like they miss that because on the outside, it's just like there was one night I was laying in bed. It was like, what is this? It was about, when did I get out? 2015? Did I get out in 2015? Yeah, 2015. So it was probably a little bit after that. Like, I was reading something and I looked up and I was like, dude. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm all alone in my room. And so, like, usually, like, there's somebody in your room with you that you're like, dude, listen to this. And it's like, there's that camaraderie. There's that feeling of companionship. You always have somebody to hang out with, to talk to. You're never really alone. And so I think that's the thing is that when you're out in the real world, there's a lot of times when you're alone. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something.
Mm-hmm.
The lads and
the camaraderie.
Yeah, I miss that.
That's about the only thing you miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, don't get me wrong, I miss firefights, believe it or not. I miss getting to firefights. I miss weapon handling. I miss teaching it, but that can be replaced by anything. You know what I mean? If you find another passion, another love in life, you replace it with that, you know what I mean? Is there anything you regret about your service?
Not really.
Do you think he misses the firefights because of the adrenaline rush?
Yeah, no, I think that's a part of it.
Because I'm trying to think, why would you miss?
It's the adrenaline rush. It's whether or not knowing whether or not you're about to die or survive, and I've never been in a firefight, so I don't have that particular feeling. But I knew a lot of people that did miss it, and so.
Through the years, I am proud to have been a part of it. It took all my youth. If I hadn't have been there, I'd have missed quite a lot. And no, I don't regret it one bit.
I don't think I regret it because it's like I said, it's what I've gained from it. You know what I mean? Mentally, it's been mentally draining once I've got out, but at the same time, it's strengthening at the same time. So where something's suffering, someone else is strengthening. You know what I mean? So I'm becoming a better person.
Well, you want to tell your story. From my point of view, it may be to help the younger generation. They don't know about your war. They don't know about my war. And by coming on this sort of thing, people watch it and they realize it's part of history. I would think so, or I hope so.
That's something I wrote on Facebook when I came back from Afghanistan. I was like, I just took part of something that in 10, 15 years will be in history books. And it's like, it's an interesting feeling knowing that you've become a part. Like, my name's never going to be in a history book, obviously, but something I took part in is going to be in a history book. And it's an interesting thing. It's kind of like, although whoever was around when the forefathers were creating America, they were around during that time. They were part of that history. It is a cool feeling.
Well, I kind of feel that about in my lifetime. There's never been, there's a few things that have happened. Like, I was part of JFK getting
getting assassinated.
And when that happened, you knew this is going to be a part of history.
The moon landing.
The moon landing.
The landing.
We never went. The Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Now it's the pandemic, and look at this election.
Yeah.
I mean, right now I'm living in more parts that I know are going to be historically, people like JFK was the landmark. It was before or after JFK got killed. Or now it's before or after the Twin Towers. It's kind of a landmark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that, yeah.
Well, with me, it's like for 10 years after getting out, I suffered and I went into a dark place and I kept it to myself. And every time someone mentioned the military or something like that, I'd switch off and walk away. Didn't want to know. And I'm still a little bit like that now. But since this year, I've started a new project. I've been talking about my career and my story, my mental health and my fight and struggle and all that carry on. It's actually helping me. It's helping me talking about it. But more importantly, there could be someone sat in a dark room right now who hasn't left the house for 2 weeks, and they're scrolling the phone. They come across LADbible. They listen to this. They listen to me and you, and they go, "I've been through that. I've seen this."
And that's why, I talk about mental health so much. Is I've been in that place where I thought, it's a dark place, and you get out and you seek help, and that help, knowing that other people seek help is a big thing. Like, I told a story, I don't know if I've ever told it on YouTube, but a general was sitting in a mental health clinic at the hospital I worked at, and I walked by and I was like, "Hey, sir, do you need any help?" He goes, "No, I just sit here." So when people walk by and they see me, they think, well, if he can get help, I can get help. And so it's an interesting kind of thing, and it's like, just knowing that somebody else is doing it may help somebody else get the help that they need. And so that's why I'm so open about, my problems and things like that. So
that's worse for me, or that's not as worse for me. And if they stand up and they walk out the front door and they give it a go, then we save one, then it's worth it. So that's why I talk about my story now. And
well, I wouldn't have known your story if I hadn't have listened to it here, would I? I've learned a lot from you, and I hope our little talk today has helped in that way.
I think it will. Not just the younger generation. I think the eldest as well. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
See, there's their bond between them that no one else will really understand, and that's the cool kind of part about being in the military and having served, is that no matter if you meet somebody who else served, no matter what they did, you still have that kind of bond,
Mm-hmm.
So. I just thought that was cool.
Yep.
That was fun.
That's our educational part of the channel.
So.
It's not all about just music, but there's other things out there.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting thing, and it gave me a little bit of a chance to talk about my experience and stuff like that. So, you know, if you guys, hopefully you learned a little bit more about the beard and things like that. So
He didn't have a beard back then.
weren't allowed.
Exactly. So, anyway.
But now it's all glorious. Look at
Oh.
it. Anyways, guys, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you can give it a thumbs down. It's not going to hurt me, or you can give it a thumbs up because it's not going to hurt you. If you're new or you haven't yet, please do consider subscribing. It really does help out the channel. We are on our way to 25K. We're trying to get to 20 or 30K by Christmas Day. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. And as always, until next time, you two, smile like you mean it from the Bushy fam.